Well, can you hear me from here?
That's good, that's good.
I was 6 pages into this talk when it came to mind that these stories, although interesting, had a certain amount of self-aggrandizement. So I started all over. Also, could I expect others to be interested in my personal connection with other species in a mind place so far away from the busyness of the all-consuming culture that we find ourselves in? The Hopi say that Creator made Grandmother Spider Woman to weave the web of life where we were all one with creation and all things were beautiful and in balance. Life and death were the exchange of energies throughout the planet and through all its beings. The great web is what we call the circle of life, where all is one in God, in beauty and balance, and in exquisite harmony. I heard a story somewhere along the line that humans lost their oneness and saw themselves as separate. So Creator caused a great earthquake and a big split in the earth. And all the animals were on one side of the chasm and all the humans were on the other side. And at the very last minute, the dogs jumped over to be with the humans. I believe it. And they have been trying to be patient with us since then. If one can look into a dog's eyes to catch a glimpse in the depth of that unconditional love and forgiveness, that's a path leading home. The Christian version is we got kicked out of the Garden of Eden and have been trying to get back ever since. I was introduced to a great little book called Kinship with All Life while living about 17 miles outside of Joshua Tree. It's a simple little book of a man and his experience that led to research and to interspecies communication. And along with Edward Albee's Desert Solitaire, my experiments and experience were focused on the wild ones for a couple of years. Olivia, the kangaroo rat, kept me company by the outside fire for the first couple weeks in the late fall. Birdseed was her favorite, and she was my only companion for 2 weeks in the outback until it got too cold. She went to her burrow, and I went to the wood stove. One of my first experiments was to communicate with the red ants that would wander in as my cabin slab was only an inch off the ground. Our deal was that they would stay out of my food, the dog's food, off the counter in the little kitchen area, and they could have the crumbs on the floor. It worked. I became more careful where I stepped, and they were very careful where they wandered. Tortoises would crawl up on the slab to get out of the summer cloudburst, and cactus wrens would pull the hair out of the corn stalks. Red racers lived in the cool garden. My horse supplied the land with much needed nitrogen, and hawks, owls, ravens, and vultures kept the sky interesting along with the dust dervishes. The road runners were good for a laugh, taking themselves very seriously, but I could never get one to go beep beep. One of my favorite stories is making friends with a pair of big Chihuahua ravens, trading them leftover popcorn for the borrowed dog food I left on the outside table. Pretty soon they were eating out of my hand, standing on my head, nibbling my earrings, cawing and gurgling very loudly in my ear, pulling things out of my shirt pocket, and laughing at me and with me. And it was a timeless moment that lasted about 10 minutes. Pretty magic. After flying off with a gifted piece of cellophane, I would see them around, and they would laugh from a distant perch, but never came back for more popcorn. The tarantula migrations were really interesting. A swath of moving carpet about 1/4 to a half a mile wide, traveling south in the fall from God knows where, going to God knows where. These big hairy guys were very docile and very, very fragile. They would let you pick them up if you were careful not to squish or drop them. Our agreement was safe passage through my property, but stay off of my slab and out of my cabin. I imagine they like to freak out the weekenders as much as I did. Scorpions and vigoroons were not on the friendly critter list. As life changed, I married and had a child, and we came north. We had Chippers, the orphan chipmunk. We fed him canned milk on the corner of a dish towel, and soon we would play hide the peanut on the kitchen table. There was Woodstock, the fledgling goldfinch. I raised him on cream of rice and was able to reintroduce him successfully to his flock. Norris, the potbelly pig, and Tigger, a yellow dwarf macaw, were also part of our big animal-loving household. Life changed again, and I found myself widowed and once again practicing solitude. Again, I was living with the wild ones. The game trail across my property hosted a good-sized deer herd, Wiley the coyote, the fox family, who raised their kits for about 3 years in an old shed next door. There was plenty of bird drama, a cougar sighting now and then, to make it interesting. There was a big red-shouldered hawk, stunned by flying into the chain link fence, that I could reassure as I picked him up in a towel and moved him to safety. The eye-to-eye connection was incredibly stoic and strong. He was ready for whatever. Lily the deer was a joy in our neighborhood, and all the neighbors looked out for her. For it's not good to be a people-friendly wild thing. She would come around to get those big old ears scratched and maybe some sort of a handout. The last time I saw her, she had mountain marks on her back and would be a mama in a few months. The Hopi have an interesting take on snakes. Their culture works with the complexity of ceremonies that are thousands of years in the making, sometimes incorporating other animal spirits and spirits of nature and disembodied supernatural beings. The only words I can find is primal magic. Snakes of all kinds are used in the late summer snake dances. The snake priest hunts snakes on a certain astrological day while they are in an altered state of mind. They take the snakes into the kivas, which are the underground lodges, where they would pray and do ceremony with the snakes for 16 days. Then it's the public dance, where the snake and antelope priests dance with the snakes and embody them with the prayers of the village. The snakes are let loose to crawl away to tell the Earth Mother that the Hopis need rain for their crops. It was explained to me snake people are the humblest of creatures because they have no legs and have to crawl closest to Mother Earth. Therefore, she hears the earnestness and power of the prayers that they carry. And it always rains, always. I was lucky to have been invited, as the dances are now closed to outsiders. Did you know beetles scream? I found a big beetle about that big with these huge antennas caught in a ball of dog hair behind a shelf. And if you've been in my house, you know everything's covered with dog hair. I put him on my art table and very carefully tried to extract him from his hairy prison. I guess I pulled too hard a couple times because he would scream in discomfort. Once he was free, he accepted a drop of water and was sent to hunt under my house. Who knew they sounded like a very tiny person? And I'm grateful I found him in time because he's one of the guys that keeps the ants away. I recently read a story where a fellow rescued a spider on the floor and put him outside. When asked why not just kill it, the man replied, because if I were in the wrong place at the wrong time, I would hope someone would show me the same mercy. Now, why am I telling you all of this? I have discovered in my comfort and strength in the world right now is in the truth of nature. To acknowledge our bonds and brotherhoods fills me with a sense of wholeness, peace, and purity that the outside world is lacking. We humans have sophisticated ourselves out of the web of life with technological overkill, corporate and personal greed, and separation from Mother Earth. All the life she holds dear, and most of all ourselves and our spiritual neighbor, to the point of pooping in our own nest. Can you sit still without thinking of all the things you think need to be done? Or or what you're going to say to somebody in retort? Can you sit still long enough to feel the flow and harmony of all the life around you? Can you simplify your life enough to cause as little impact as possible to the natural world? Can you see yourself as part of the natural world, or do you see yourself separate in nature to be conquered? There is so much more going on that we're not aware. We know some animals have social and cultural lives. We know they have emotion, joy, grief, attachments, and neurosis, and unspoken language. But do they have legends and heroes? What do they communicate with each other that we are not privy to? What is my dog sharing with barks back and forth with other dogs down the canyon? How about those ravens carrying on an audible conversation, politely responding back and forth to each other? Critters don't seem to worry about life and death and don't dwell on their own demise. Life is here and now and beautiful because they never left the garden. And that's the lesson for all of us. We spend a great deal of our time contemplating the myriads of social and technological distractions, the myriads of judgments and choices. It's so hard to imagine a pure moment with no thoughts but total peace of mind. Our culture tends to beat us up, to make us feel less than, to feel guilt about things we know nothing about, to make us go so fast and so afraid we become sheep, panicked by unknown and artificial possibilities. That's a nice thing about Unity teachings that help us get in touch with that magical part of life, where love and the natural world are what's real, where life as a whole is considered sacred and joyous, and where God is good all the time. I invite you to be still in your own yard or area. Hang over the railing or anywhere you feel comfortable in just being quiet outside for a while. In quiet reverie, you may see birds doing bird things in the trees, a butterfly flitting through, or that little ant going as fast as he can to get off the hot pavement. They have much to teach you about resolve and courage and the focus of now. I would hope that they would teach you that in all their efforts, they value and deserve life as much as we. Peace. Be still in the garden of your soul, where all life creates a beautiful symphony and harmony, even if it's only for a moment. And when you return from that garden, the cares and superficialities of the outside world bounce off of you because you begin to feel your place in the web of life once more. Somewhere inside, you have an animal spirit who gently lets you know you won't be tamed, and certainly the outside world doesn't see you walk among them. Peace. Walk as a free being in beauty and balance as much as you can allow yourself in the dictates of the moment. Nature heals. Remember that little spider walking across your floor has the eternal web of life in its genes, and it could be somebody's grandmother. Namaste. Om Tat Asana.
Thank you, Shyla. That was great. That was really so sweet. Reminds me of that Joni Mitchell song, Woodstock. We've got to get back to the garden. call for offerings. So who would like to?
I would.
Great, thank you. And we can take our offering in our hand and say the prayer for prosperity.
Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Father, Mother God. Keep it flowing.
And we give thanks for these offerings freely given. We ask for divine guidance and the board for using these funds to make our community, our congregation, and our world even more beautiful. Amen. And so time for our circle.
Oh, okay.
Gosh, that's
Gee, this is good.